Now we're ready to work on section 7, and this section only has medium weight chipboard. It's listed under the medium weight chipboard cutting guide under section 7, and then there's a template. We'll use the gable cutting for both pieces, and then on one piece we'll cut these interior openings. So I'll start by cutting the gable. Like most of them, we find our center line and then measure down 3/4 of an inch on either side, connect those measures, and cut the triangles off to create the gable. So I have my two gables cut, and I'm just going to put one of these pieces aside. And on the other piece, I've continued my center line down a little bit, and then I'm going to draw a 1/2 inch border on the two sides and then again along the angled top. And once I have those lines drawn, I'll just use the measure line on my template to draw the horizontal lines in. And now I have all my lines drawn, and I can cut out those two holes. And that's all the prep work we have for section 7. Now we can make the boxes, and we'll start as usual by putting the vertical pieces on, which should fit exactly in those openings. You might want to measure your top ones and make sure they're 3/4. Sometimes when you make this angle, it could end up being a little bit less than 3/4. So if you need to make a little trim, go ahead and do that. But otherwise, we'll put those 4 vertical pieces on. And then while those vertical pieces are setting up for a minute, I'm going to cut the angle on my top back piece, and I'm going to find the center point and then measure down a 1/2 inch on either side, a 1/2 inch on either side. So here's my little top back piece ready to go, and now we should be able to put in all of our horizontal pieces. So I'll put these 3 horizontal pieces in. Remember, they are cut long enough to overlap the ends of the side pieces. And then finally we can put the little angled top pieces in. Make sure they meet at that top corner. And then once you have all of the ceilings and floors on and they've set up a minute, you can run glue around the tops and put the 2 back pieces on. And there's the little boxes done. Before we can join the sides of our building, we of course need some ledger strips. For the narrower sides, I've cut them the exact length of the side, which is 1 5/8. And they will go edge to edge and be held back a 1/16 of an inch from both the base and the top. And then on the base for the wider parts, I've cut them 2 5/8, 2 5/8, and they'll get centered and held back a 1/16 of an inch from that base edge. Now for the gable ends, I've cut the pieces 1 1/4 inch, and when I put them on, I'll make sure I hold them back at 1/8 of an inch, at least from the side edges. This section also goes together with gluing. I'm going to put the 2 wider sides aside for right now, and I've cut 4 pieces of ledger strip that are just shy of 4 inches, and we'll put them on the narrower sides and put them right up against the outside edges on the long sides. I gave everything a good burnish with my bone folder, and now I'm ready for the glue up. I'll take one of the narrow sides and run glue along that entire edge, and then put it down on top of a wider side, watching the alignment on the bottom. Then I'll repeat that for my second narrow side, and then allow those two sides to thoroughly dry. And once our two sides are thoroughly dry, we can put on the remaining side, being careful to line up the bottom, of course, and it should just fit edge to edge. And then allow that to thoroughly dry. Now that our sides are thoroughly dry, we can put on the base and the top pieces. I've run a bead of glue along the tops of the ledger strips on the bottom, and the base should fit exactly in there. I'll go ahead and get that in there. I'll put a rubber band around that to hold it. And then our top pieces are 1 1/2 by 1 5/8. The 1 5/8 is the width of the building, and when we put these in, there'll be a little bit of a gap at the top, and don't worry about that, but just put them in. I'm just doing a little dry fit here, and just put them in, and you'll have a little gap at the top, but don't let that bother you. And so go ahead and run glue along the ledger strips. So again, I put some rubber bands around to just hold it in place, and this building should measure 3 by 1 3/4. So I'm just going to put it on my craft mat and make sure it's nice and square, and then I'll set it aside to dry. Section 7 has a little bay window, and it goes together much like the extension did on Section 5. We'll start out by taking our two side pieces, and we'll use the front as a helper piece and line up the bottom edge. Bottom edges are aligned here, and then just make a little tick mark there on one side. And we're going to connect that tick mark with the outside corner here and cut off a triangle. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. Make a tick mark at the top of that front side, connect that with the corner up here, and cut off that triangle. Then we can do a little cutting on our base and top pieces. Here we'll measure in 3/8 of an inch from either end. I made those two little tick marks. I'll connect those to these corners and cut off those triangles, and repeat that with the other piece. Now we're ready for some assembly, and I've cut two joining strips that are the length of the height here, a little bit over 2 1/2, and I'm going to put them on my side pieces. I'll butt those sides up against the back, and then I'll attach that and repeat that over here on this other side. I'll give those joining strips a good burnish with my bone folder, and then cut off any excess that's above the chipboard. Next, I want to draw a guideline on this back piece. I'll turn it 90 degrees, and I'm going to connect these two corners, the lower corners, And I just need a line across the back portion, but you can extend it across the whole length. So you have a line like that. Next we'll put in the base. We'll only attach it to the back at this point, and it goes right even with the bottom edge. So I'll run a bead of glue along that bottom edge, and that base piece should fit right on that length, and again put it right to the bottom of the construction. Then you can turn around. We'll put glue on the inside of this line, and we'll put the top piece in. Make sure that you've got the glue towards the main part of the window. And we'll let both of those pieces thoroughly dry. Now that the base and the top are thoroughly dry, we can run some glue on the angled sides of the base and the top piece, and then bring the side in. On the bottom, it should be flush, the corners should meet. The top, it should be below. It should be below that corner. And then just hold some pressure on there until that glue can grab. Once that glue has grabbed on, and take our front piece and do a little dry fit here. It's going to sit on top of those two sides, and you want to see if you've got any overhang. I've got a little overhang, I think you can see it there, and I think it's about 1/16 of an inch, so I'm just going to trim that off, and you can trim yours off as you need. And once you have it trimmed to size, go ahead and run some glue around those edges and then place the front piece on. Give that a little pressure and allow it to dry. And that's all we'll do on the little bay window for now. So that's our section 7 construction completed. We have the main building part. We have 2 leftover roof pieces that go for that building. Then we have our little bay window, and we also have 1 roof piece for that bay window left. So I'll just put all those pieces aside for now.